Welcome to another episode of the Tour on Air podcast. Today, I'm joined live from Portland by André Allen Anjos, better known as the crypto-friendly music artist, RAC. Welcome to the show, André.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
We are certainly stoked to have you. You come with all the accolades. You're Grammy Award winning recording here with Bob Moses, Tearing Me Up, that I actually just listened to again prior to our conversation, and it definitely got me into the mood. You've done tremendous work, remixing artists like Lady Gaga and Lana Del Rey and U2 and so forth. So lots of musical credentials. But then what we're really interested in, is kind of your crossover into tech and Web3 crypto specifically. Where you've really kind of trailblazed the path that probably many musicians are thinking of at the moment, may take in the future. So I think lots of learnings here to uncover. Let's start maybe just briefly kind of by talking about why you even thought that it was important or worthwhile to explore crypto and Web3 primitives for your journey as a musician and artist.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to sort of unpack there, and it all kind of started. I like to trace it back to even the earlier days where we were kind of talking about this before we got on, but I'm from Portugal originally, and before it was sort of a hot spot for tourism, it was a very sort of isolated country, and the internet was sort of my introduction into the world and to more specifically music. And I discovered music on the internet. I like to say that I discovered the Beatles on Napster, and it's true. So the internet has always been this sort of like enabling kind of thing for me. I really I became very passionate about it, and throughout that process, like I saw how even before I was an artist, like how the music industry treated the internet and how they were sort of at odds with it for some reason, and instead of embracing it. I remember at the time with Napster, everybody thought that the music industry would embrace it, just like, oh well, we're just going to start selling music on Napster or whatever, and instead they sort of like cracked down on it and shut everybody down and started suing grandmas, and it became this very kind of negative thing. And I was on the other end. I was just a listener and a creator, and I was like, well, why are we doing this? Like, this is like an amazing technology. Like, why are we, why are we attacking these people? Like, this is just, we can make this work. This isn't like some kind of, antagonistic thing. So anyway, that was sort of my first experience with the industry. And, in that process, I saw them shut down Morpheus, Kazaa, LimeWire, all these different applications. And the only one they couldn't shut down was BitTorrent. And while BitTorrent isn't a cryptocurrency or anything like that, it is sort of a decentralized technology. And that's really what drew me to initially Bitcoin, and then really with Ethereum. That's when the light bulb kind of went off, where I was like, oh, well, we can sort of utilize this technology to create a decentralized music industry. We can sort of bypass a lot of the issues that have been pervasive in the sort of monopoly that exists in the current music industry. So all the while, the timelines, I'm kind of all over the place here, but I was also, I started my career in 2007. I had lots of different experiences working in the film and music industry, in the TV industry, and then working in the actual music industry, doing remixes and creating my own work and signing to majors and working with independents and like releasing stuff on my own. I sort of kind of done everything at this point, and I feel like it gave me kind of a unique perspective in the sense of like, well, there's this opportunity here to sort of rebuild this the way it should have been, and I became very vocal about that and became very passionate about it. It was never about the currency aspect. I don't come from a financial background or anything like that, but I became very interested in this idea of sort of bypassing these sort of very ossified systems and institutions that I think are holding back music. So I'm like, why don't we recreate the music industry on the internet, and create, open source networks and a lot of things that I ideologically I kind of align with. So that was sort of my first. That's when it clicked for me, I guess.
And before we get into sort of the examples of you specifically have done and your learnings around it, maybe one or two more questions on sort of like the lay of the land of the music industry and why you felt the need for that. I mean, there's this argument that I heard from like some music executives, and I guess like in a way like your question as to like why didn't they embrace this technology and you were so embracing it, I probably has to do with the fact that at that point in time like you were up and coming and they had like these existing kind of infrastructures that obviously served their purpose and kind of that had the whole kind of wheel spinning, so there's always this, I guess, fear and angst of something new that could kind of disrupt the industry, and to some degree I guess we saw it in the music industry also. But like I remember like having one conversation with somebody in the music industry and he said, well, Bob Dylan, for example, like he would not have gotten to this kind of cultural zeitgeist had some music executive not push for that, like seeing this artist and you kind of like saying like this needs to be zeitgeist, like we need to push this person, like he needs to be on radio all across America. He was convinced like that music history kind of would have been differently, that music at that time wasn't actually so I guess viral, you would say, in the sense that it could have, gotten to that degree of cultural zeitgeist, just, by its own or by kind of community or grassroots or kind of bottoms up approach. What would you counter to that?
No, I think that's a fair point. I think like, when we look at that era, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have the capacity to communicate on the level that we do. It was very much a gate kept, kind of, all media was sort of, gate kept to some degree. So like you needed those champions, those people at the labels to sort of push things. And I agree, like Bob Dylan on the surface is not somebody that, like you would think would be a chart topping artist or anything like that. And I think it took a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money to sort of put him where he is. I definitely don't deny that. I think like, I could also sit here for 4 hours and talk about like the problems that I have with the music industry. It's less about like the A&Rs and individuals and people that, because I think those like, I think the people that love music, that work in music, I don't think that's really the issue. I think we're sort of in this situation where it's like it's a systemic issue. It's been ingrained in us. We're sort of inheriting something that somebody made a decision in the 40s, in the 50s, and we're still just living with that precedent. So, there's a lot of people that have come along the way and be like, well, that doesn't really make sense today. Why are we still doing it like this? And then there's all these people, well, it has to be this way because we must maintain control. And there's a lot of competing factors here. And my whole thesis is, if that argument is valid, for that person to be the champion for Bob Dylan, then that should compete on the same level as an independent artist that's, bubbling up from below, like those two can coexist. I don't think they're at odds, so I think we can put that to the test. And I know where I'm placing my bets, but I think like, especially in this day and age with the technology that we have and the forms of communication that we have, I think the model needs to change. And I think that it's going to be more viral. I don't think it's really up to gatekeepers anymore.
Also, the gatekeepers, would you say, sorry to interrupt, but like, would you say they also take now just much less risk than maybe they did
absolutely.
in the early days, and now everything kind of is the same formula. It's almost like with movies, right? Like every superhero movie has the exact same structure and the same length, and it's kind of like all kind of packaged the
Well,
same and very little risk
like
taking.
from an investor's perspective, I get it. I mean, like, you do want to play it safe, of course. Like, I feel like the artistic liberty or artistic choices or chances are the last thing on the like, on the list, because like if you're putting 100, 200, 300 million dollars into a movie, I mean, you better hope that you get you make some money, right? Like I understand that perspective. The problem is that like I just feel like that leads to sort of homogenized, like you said, the superhero genre, like very formulaic stuff that I think is happening in music to some degree, maybe on a lesser scale, because the cost of making music is relatively low, but the cost of promoting something is definitely a lot higher. So I don't know, like there's there's a lot of sides to it. But the thing I was going to say is, like, as of now, we're still in a music industry that is, I think the latest statistic is like 80% of all music that you hear is controlled by 3 companies. So it's kind of, we just want to make that independent side of it just bigger. I think that'll lead to more healthy competition and in this marketplace, and lead to more interesting music too. That's something that kind of what you're saying is, like, the labels will probably take less chances, or probably will only come in maybe when something's already connecting on that ground level. So I don't know, there's a lot of ways. I think the notion of the labels sort of picking up like a little baby artist and making them what they are, I think that's sort of an antiquated version. I don't think that happens anymore. I think most major labels are signing TikTok artists now because there's already momentum there, and so yeah, I don't know. This is
It's
very
even
much
with
like
the media. Yeah, I mean, you're totally
yeah.
right. Yeah. Like even the role of media, in that way. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, like the reach that TikTokers and YouTubers have. And I mean, and we're going off topic here, but I just had to look it up the other day, like in terms of kind of like what is the Fox News viewership, which is like on average like 2.5 million people per show, and then like what's the average kind of Mr. Beast YouTube video, and it's like more than 10x, like one single YouTuber. I mean, so these it's really, and I think we haven't even seen the impact yet of that reach, because a lot of it is apolitical, and it's kind of like just entertainment.
It's
It hasn't
friendly,
really touched,
it's
other parts
accessible.
of the cultural zeitgeist yet. But so yeah, in what way then, like, do you see crypto or Web3 primitives kind of tackling this problem?
Yeah, so it's I like to preface anything I say with saying that, like, this is very early. Like, we're sort of in the ideation phase. Like, we're still figuring out like what the right thing to do is. But I think like in I've been experimenting with this stuff since 2017. So we've been going through various different iterations of things that I think are working. Some things are not. And but like the thing I'll defend forever is like the notion that we should be able to experiment, and it should be an open marketplace and open systems to be able to try different things. Like, I think that's really important. Otherwise we just get the same thing over and over again. So like, okay, like, how does crypto solve this? Is like, crypto is sort of the only way, in my view, that can basically force the major labels like out of their position. Like, I think that's the only way for an independent class of artists to really flourish, because otherwise we're just playing by their rules. Spotify, love them or hate them, which is actually a great consumer product, is effectively controlled by the 3 major labels. So it's like, well, we can upload to Spotify, but we're still playing by their rules. We're still playing by their royalty rates. We have no choice in the matter. We're the only choice that we have is to participate or to not. And not participating is essentially not making a living. So I think like that is sort of the most basic level thing, which is, I think crypto and Web3 in general is the only way to break away from that system. It's the only thing that they can't control. It's the only thing they can't shut down. It's the only way I think that this is going to happen. Now, what does that ecosystem look like? I don't know. I mean, like, I have a lot of theories, a lot of ideas on like what that looks like. There's been a lot of hype around music NFTs now, and we can get into that in a little bit, but we're social tokens or NFT membership tokens, and like we're figuring out all of these things all at once. We're figuring out what the relationship is in between an artist and their fans, and we're sort of recontextualizing what the role of a label is, like what the role of management is. There's so many, everything is being questioned right now, and I kind of love that. I thrive in that kind of environment. So some people, for some people, it's like a little too much, and they just rather kind of play by the rules and do it that way. And maybe they're being successful in that, and that's fine. But like, I think I've just been doing this for long enough that I want to try different things and just see what happens.
Can you shine a light just, briefly for us on kind of like the support ecosystem or, service ecosystem, that an artist, of a certain size kind of is, reliant on? Because there's the label, right? There is the publisher. I'm still not 100% sure what the difference is in all cases. There's I guess, PR and marketing, and then there's the promoters, the concert promoters, there's the fans, of course, and it seems like there's just a lot of people that kind of manage the kind of delivery and not just of the music, but then also kind of the engagement of the artist to his or her fans. Am I seeing this right?
Yeah.
Am I missing any?
Yeah. No, that's a pretty good overview of sort of the various different components of it. And they're all these different entities, and they all, that's actually one of the biggest challenges of being an artist, is just getting all of those pieces in place and getting them to speak to each other and communicate and align. And yeah, it's quite a complex web. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate.
And so I guess, yeah, let's say tech pessimists would maybe argue like, well, technology is just looking at another vertical, for disintermediation, right? For cutting out the middleman, and that whether that leads to a better world or not, is ultimately, I guess, hard to say. But is this process like rolling? Like, do we see this type of disintermediation in the music world, irrespectively even of crypto? Like, do we already see it, pre-crypto, like, with Web 2?
Oh, absolutely. I feel like there's been the general move in the creator economy, and everything that's sort of been happening, crypto aside, that's been a trend for a while now. But like, I don't see it as sort of like, the goal isn't to get everybody fired and just be like, use AIs and robots and whatever. Like, to me, the goal is actually just to keep people honest. Because if you're competing with zero, if what you can do can be replaced, by an application or something, like, are you really adding value? Like, I think that it's sort of just a way to sort of, like, the rates that people charge and things, like all those services that people provide, I think will be tested. And I think that that's a healthy thing to happen, especially in an environment that has been fairly anti-artist for a very long time. So, now we have labels that are, on the independent level, most of the deals are 50-50. So I think it's fair to challenge that and be like, well, okay, is that fair? Like, is the 50%, tax on everything you do, is that a fair amount? When, is that proportionate to the amount of input and creative support that they give you? Some might agree that yes, that's worth it. Some might not. I've had various different experiences with that. I've had great experiences with labels. I love working with labels and people. Like, it's great to have a team around you that is sort of aligned, and they see They help you find the artwork. They help you get it distributed into different places. Like, that's stuff that I don't want to deal with personally. I
Yeah.
don't want to be calling up record stores and be like, hey, can you please carry this? Like those services, they add value. I don't think I could sit here and claim that they don't. Of course they do. But I think this sort of disintermediation that you're speaking of is sort of a way to keep them honest and keep them and challenge them and be like, well, okay, let's see what you're worth. Let's, if I can do this on my own, why do I need you? And you have to prove that to me, So I think that's sort of a general trend. But it's sort of, I want to make just an important distinction, which is that, kind of what I was saying earlier, it's like there's a lot of really amazing people in the music industry that love music and really care about it and care about their artists and want to see them succeed. And it's not so much a people problem. It's sort of the historic precedent that's set by 70, 80 years of music industry practices that were, effectively started by the mafia. So, so it's like, it's hard to break away from that because, well, at every step of the way, they're like, well, Michael Jackson took this deal or Prince took this deal. It's like, who are you?
Yeah.
So it's hard to reset that, I guess. So, and I think a lot of the issues that really stem in the music industry come from the financialization side of it, or the loans, that people call them advances, and what they come up with these different terms to sort of shield it from the fact that it's just like a really bad loan. So anyway, like I just wanted to make the distinction because like sometimes when people talk about, oh, the music industry sucks, it's like it's just talking about this general idea. It's like it's really not a people problem necessarily. Like there's a lot of really amazing people that are very helpful and like really make this whole thing work. They're not the problem.
Fair enough. So now let's get to, some of your experiments, because you were so early experimenting, with Web3 primitives. So you created your own token, in essence, the RAC token, which is a community token by Zora. We also see, others. I mean, let's distinguish basically between a social token, which has this kind of benefit of also providing liquidity to the token, ideally in a market, where there's enough liquidity for it. Comes with a whole other set of challenges, and maybe in a follow-up question we can talk about those. We also see, of course, NFTs. So non-fungible tokens being used in the music industry. We have platforms like Royal, for example, where musicians can use NFTs to get their fans to buy into the actual rights of a given piece, and then moving forward also be part of the financial success of such music. Where are we at? Like, what have you seen kind of gain traction? Where in that early phase of experimentation do you see yourselves?
Yeah, well, I've tried almost everything. I I think right now I'm mostly so like you said, I have sort of the social token, and that was something that we launched in 2020 before NFTs really kind of took off. And that has sort of advantages and disadvantages, like you mentioned. The goal with that token was to sort of, I gave it away, so it wasn't like a financial, it wasn't like an ICO, selling, trying to sell equity in anything. It was actually just a token that was representative of my fan club, or my fans basically. So it was a way to sort of, I actually saw it more as a way to like bypass social media in a way where like it still taps into social media, but it's sort of like a layer above social media, where for years and years I've been building audiences on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. But at every step of the way, they at one point sort of cut it off and charge you for it. So I think I kept getting kind of frustrated by that, and it's like, Instagram is basically making money off of my following. by what I'm creating and the effort that I'm putting into it. That's what people are there for. They're not there for Instagram, you know. And obviously platforms do contribute. I don't mean to say they're completely worthless, but it just felt very lopsided because, like, you know, it's like, okay, well, it's this form of communication, but I can't even access them. So, you know, I just started to, you know, I thought, like, how do I create this token that's sort of, you know, basically airdropped or sent to everybody that has been a fan of mine or had some kind of participation in my world or ecosystem, anybody that bought merch or went to a show, or, you know, we just tried to airdrop the token to as many people as possible and try to bootstrap this community around this thing that was really not meant to be financial in nature. You know, it's a more casual thing. I think it's inevitable to have some financialization of it, but I was always very adamant about it not being, you know, a representation of the financial side of it. I don't like, I think you get into murky territory, and maybe it was also about optimizing for, like, who you want to be in that community. Do I want people that are just trying to flip it and trade it? Not really. Yeah. So it's like, it also was like that, where if I was being very adamant about, you know, downplaying the financial side of it, I think I would get more people that just wanted to play with technology and be earnestly involved in a community that's fairly small, but, you know, kind of growing and be on the, sort of the ground level of something interesting, you know, happening online.
And so everybody got one token? Was that kind of the case? So everybody kind of got the same amount?
It was
whatever
like
the number was, but
yeah. We had done a calculation based on, like, sort of it was all kind of all over the places based on, you know, people that were on Patreon or on Twitch or had bought merch or something. It was kind of a loose amount, you know. It was meant to be, you know, not a direct proportion to your financial contribution, but, like, it's a good metric to sort of base that off of at first, you know. Like, you know, nobody bought merch thinking that they're going to get a token, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it was just it was a reasonably good metric to sort of just airdrop some tokens.
And everybody, let's get a little into the specific weeds here. So everybody got an email basically saying, hey, you know, you have, you know, done XYZ in the past, and, you know, you can now claim this this token.
And people follow a link in the at the time we were using Zora, and they followed a link and you went to the Zora site and you claimed your tokens, and that's that. Then you connect them to Discord, and then you're sort of a part of the community, you know, in that way. It wasn't, you know, it was more of a slow transition thing, more so than it was like, okay, everybody needs to use this now. So it was more of like, how do I convert all these people on Patreon, all these people on Twitch that, you know, are a part of the community, but they're not all interconnected. So, like, let me try to connect them a little bit more clearly. And so that was more what we were going for. And, you know, it's been kind of a slow transition over time, but pretty much everybody in the Discord now is connected via that token. And, you know,
and is there a shared incentive for the token to, or for you as an artist now, to become more successful? Like, how have you created that link? You know, and there is, I guess, a price also now for the token.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in. We were very adamant about not being a part of the financial trading side of it, you know, because, I mean, a lot of for legal reasons, you know, we also just don't want to go there. But so it is traded on, like, Uniswap and, like, open markets like that. I knew people were going to do that anyway, but you know, we kind of have no control over that. You know, I tried to place more emphasis on the social side of it, and you know, for example, like, if you could, for example, like, there's, you know, people that you know, create you know, different community events for the fans or something like that. You know, I'll give them some tokens, or, like, we had, like, a little competition for creating like decorating one of our metaverse spaces, and you know, that are sort of like shared spaces, and, you know, there was, like, kind of like people won those tokens, but and yes, there's a financial value, but it's also kind of just like a social value. It's like a kind of a reputational thing. You know, it's stratified within the community. Is like, if you have X amount, you know, you're a different color, you're kind of up higher on the list, you know, so there's a little bit of a hierarchy to it.
Maybe you get a
But
party invite or like an after party or backstage. You do stuff like that.
yeah, stuff like that,
Yeah.
or you know, discounts on merch, you know, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's you know, I've been trying to you know, there's so much talk about like utility and all this stuff. It's more, it's the first step was, the first phase was really just getting people on there, you know, getting
Yeah.
people to interconnect on this with this token, and I think
Yeah.
we've gotten there. And now it's starting to build more experiences around them. So if you go to like my website, which I have, I can't believe I got this domain, but it's r.ac. So it's like the shortest domain I could ever hope for. But if you go there and you connect your wallet with the tokens, now suddenly you have access to a bunch of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
B-sides and like, you know, music and, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and discounts, and like it's starting to unlock more and more features, and
Mm-hmm.
that's just the beginning of it. So it's, in many ways it's kind of like airline miles
Yeah.
and like a rewards token. It's like the more you participate, the more perks you get, and it's really just about rewarding the
Mm-hmm.
super fans and in kind of embracing that deeper connection. You know, whereas a lot of you know, a lot of platforms today are more focused on the mass audience. You know, let's get as many millions of
Mm-hmm.
people as we can, and we'll make that work by charging them pennies. You know, and my approach has been more like, let me actually offer value and you know, be closer to my maybe smaller community, but they in turn are more appreciative and more the financial side of it actually ends up working without even being, you know,
Yeah.
forceful about it. It just kind of
It's
evens out.
yeah. It's like this famous post by Kevin Kelly, the 1,000 true fans, right?
Yeah, it's
Which
true.
I would recommend anybody who's interested in this to check out. Which basically states, you know, like often I think it was actually written with artists and bands in mind, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, having 1,000 true fans that will go to all of your concerts and buy the merch and are maybe not so price sensitive when it comes to tickets, like that can be a good business.
Right.
And I guess it's sort of a metaphor for, you know, getting you know, really close to your core fans, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000.
And
um yeah.
the one thing, the one last thing I'll mention about that
Yeah.
community is, you know, one thing that this was sort of a revelation for me, like during COVID, where I you know, I'd been working professionally for like 12 or 13 years at that point. So like I had a fan base, you know, they existed, but they were like sort of at an arm's length, you know. It
Mm-hmm.
was like unidirectional, you know what I mean? Like it was like
Mm-hmm.
they would comment at me and I would read it, or maybe I'd like it or something, but
Mm-hmm.
there was no deeper connection there. And then once I started streaming, um and I just started speaking to people, you know, through chat or whatever, and then in Discord, I just had a I just became a lot closer with them. And but the real powerful thing that blew my mind, and I don't know why it's so obvious in hindsight, was that they have much more in common than just me, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
that community got stronger because of their other interests. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
maybe my music was the catalyst that brought them together. But you know, if you go to my Discord, there's more activity in the cooking chat, or you know, the or the cat photo chat or whatever, or people just posting memes, or you
Mm-hmm.
know, it's like it's they're not just sitting around talking about my music all day, you know what I mean? That's like kind of not the point.
And what like do you think is the percentage that one can convert from one's social media following into you know, a community like that? Like, are we, you know, I mean, if I guess even like if you look at like kind of user generated content, it's pretty consistent, I think, in terms of like, you know, YouTube, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8%, something like that, like single digit percent of users that
Yeah.
create content. You know, is it much less than that, would you say? Like, are we looking at like
uh,
1% or less, or
you know, I'd have to actually, that's actually a really interesting question. I don't know the exact number
mm,
for my fans, but I would assume definitely single digit, you know, a few
yeah.
percent is
Mm.
pretty, I think that's pretty normal across the board. Yeah.
But I guess like
Um,
one can use the content also, right, that is being created, with that core group, it can be used to kind of educate or entertain the remaining
Right.
followers on one social. Are you doing that already? Are you
Yeah,
creating
no,
content around that? Yeah.
like there was this is just one kind of dumb example, but when I was doing when I was streaming, there were some of the community members, this one guy in particular, he started creating like bingo cards, like this game, this like sort of game that people would play on the side. And again, like I didn't think of that, I didn't do that, but that was something that they did, and it's kind of became like this kind of inside joke with them, like making fun of like something that would happen on the stream, or it's just like, that's just like one very tiny little example of I wouldn't call it user generated content, but it's just like an activity that happens surrounding something that I was already doing, that has nothing to do, I didn't have nothing to do with that, and that they kind of did it on their own because they thought it'd be fun. And so that's like, that happens across the internet, but it doesn't happen in a very sort of scattered way. It doesn't, like, I think it if you can sort of bring that all together under the same umbrella, I think that can be really powerful, and I've seen that happen even in my small community.
And if you had to think of like the kind of core persona of people who engage with these type of experiments for you as an artist, like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but my gut feel, like having talked to a few people in the space, both on kind of the providers of social tokens and NFTs and engagement tools for artists and artists themselves, like it almost feels like the benefits are actually secondary. And people, I wonder though, like, what is it then that really brings people to experiment with it? Is it just people that love to nerd out on this kind of stuff and experiment and see where it goes, or is it people that just love your music more than anything, and that is what drives them to experiment with this? What would you say is, like, for people the key driver?
I think it's really a spectrum. It's really it's everything you just mentioned. You get all people from all kinds of areas that kind of explore this for their own reasons. I I think maybe my situation is a bit unique because I'm sort of tapping into an already existing audience that was maybe not super tech or crypto savvy, and it's been a bit of a transition, getting people used to it, and also just like learning what their pain points are is actually quite valuable. Because I think a lot of crypto companies build for crypto users, and sometimes we forget there's a whole world of people that have never even heard of this or experimented with it. So, there's a lot there. I think like I've also made it a point in my own career to sort of be experimental and try different things. And even before crypto, I was always kind of doing weird things like that. People got used to it, I think. So maybe they were a little bit more open to it than maybe some other fan bases, because there was, especially last year, there was definitely the perception, like if an artist tried to do an NFT, they were immediately canceled and like say they were destroying the environment or whatever. And it kind of, I think I kind of benefited from easing people into that.
And what would you say now, like moving forward? What are some of the things that you also kind of want to push aside, want to stop? What are you going to double down on, and what are maybe some experiments that you do want to try now moving forward? And maybe also some learning around like social token versus NFT. Is there?
Yeah.
I hear that like social tokens like have been somewhat, at least in kind of the perception of people, overtaken by NFTs.
Yeah, so if you think about like, okay, what is a social token meant to represent? I think a social token is meant to represent, in my view, like a membership in the community. I don't think it's meant to be a currency per se. It can be kind of a lot of things, all at once, and some of them make sense more than others. And I like when I started this, NFTs were not like, NFT memberships were not like a very fringe thing. And I think that a lot of social tokens have sort of morphed into NFT memberships, and I think NFT memberships are inherently social tokens. That's what they are. You know, it's just we've been calling them different things, but they're kind of the same. They're on a technical level they're different, but it's the same idea, right? So it's like it kind of depends on what you want to do with it, you know. I think if an NFT membership makes a lot of sense if there's not a lot of, you know, trading and back and forth, and it's not meant to be super financial, you know. It's really just hey, I want to access this Discord and I want my name to be up on the list, so let me buy this one. And that's, you know, it's a form of patronage almost, and a way of sort of social signaling. You know, that's the value they get out of it, you know. That's one thing. And then the ERC20 or the social token is more, I don't know, it's more fluid. It can be used a little bit differently. I will say, like, I think a lot of people ran into this, myself included, which is that sort of financial trading side of it. I was really not trying to go there, and ERC20s, or I don't know how technical I should get, but basically, like, the RAC token is a fungible token. So there's some requirements around liquidity, like people need to sort of add trading to, you know, be able to trade it on Uniswap, and all. There's a lot of sort of issues that are sort of solved by using an NFT. So an NFT is a kind of a simpler form of it, and it's maybe more desirable and just easier to digest, you know, than like a trading kind of thing. Especially for somebody that doesn't want to go there.
One other question for you then, but like, you know, in terms of, you know, next plans, anything you want to announce or can announce?
Yeah, so, you know, I launched that website, it's r.ac, and that's been sort of a big focus. But it was really about sort of laying this foundation, you know, that I really think, like, artists should sort of own their own, it should be their own platforms, you know. So everything that I've been building has been sort of like creating this sort of operating system, if you will. I mean, it's just a website, you know, but like it's a virtual operating system that connects to all these different Web3 elements. So, you know, on the surface right now, all you see is a couple little apps that you click on and, like, look at information or whatever, and, like, links to other places. But the future for me is, like, really sort of owning that whole experience, and being able to control that and stylize it and make it my own, and making it sort of you know, for that community, you know, as well. So, like, bringing those people into it, and you know, have developers build on that as well. So it's just kind of opening this whole thing up, but starting from the artist first, you know, which is kind of the opposite of how it's been, which has been, you know, platform centric. Let's get all the artists there, which I think leads to sort of very homogenized experience. And I think a lot of people on the web are sort of aching for that more personal, cooler, you know, unique experience. And I think there's a lot of value to that. So I guess I'm being somewhat vague. I think we're just, like, building a lot of you know, features and a lot of, like, cool stuff we can do with this sort of new format. But it was just important to sort of lay that foundation so we could do that, you know.
And lastly, like, a question that we ask everybody on the show is around this idea of pivoting. And, you know, we get a lot of entrepreneurs that build companies, and in the whole startup language, you know, the word pivot has, you know, this very loaded meaning of, you know, either great success of a company like Twitter that started, you know, with audio and then turned into what we now know as Twitter, and with a total pivot. But then you also get to interview people who say, you know, I was iterating my way to success, and I just, you know, always stayed on course. You know, I had this plan, and, you know, I didn't deviate from it. So, I mean, as an artist, you know, how do you go about that? Like, that kind of idea of, you know, working on something and, you know, having a vision and just keep on going, and, you know, having this iterative process, versus sometimes just having to, you know, throw something aside and start afresh. How do you make that decision?
Well, that's my favorite part about being an artist, honestly. I love the uncertainty of it. I love that it changes all the time. I sort of like, I feel like I thrive in that, that environment. Like I think it's exciting to be like, you know, put out an album in 2020 in the middle of COVID. Like we literally announced an album on the on March 20th, you know, the day that everything kind of, the world kind of shut down. And in that moment being like, okay, I know we've spent 6 months preparing for this, but like, what do we do? Like, you know, like how do we adapt? And it ended up being probably one of the more successful, you know, albums that I put out, you know, because we were sort of forced into a situation where we had to be creative and innovative. So I love that. I think it's like, it goes hand in hand with the artistic experience. Like I have actually very strong opinions on this. Like I think the way you treat your career and the way you treat the commercial side of your career and all that, I see that all as a creative exercise, and it shouldn't be this compartmentalized, like art over here, commerce over here. Like I see them both as being, you know, you can be creative on both ends. So I love that kind of stuff. I've always been kind of business minded, even though, like, you know, I obviously take the art side of it extremely seriously, and I'm very proud of everything I do. But I love the creative marketing and all of those elements to it. I think are all just part of it. You know, I think you can tell a story and you know, get people to sort of engage with it on that level. So I'm all for it. I love it. I think it's great.
So maybe you need to create a, you know, a new label, a crypto native label.
Funny you mentioned that.
In our next call, something where we talk about in our next podcast. You know, Andre, thank you so much for your time. This was you know, super interesting, and you know, hopefully we'll get to see you in Berlin. Are you going to be at South by Southwest next year?
I think I might actually. So yeah, maybe there, or I would definitely want to go to Berlin as soon as possible. So I hope we can make that happen.
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.